Welcome back. As you know, I am Eli, the Computer Guy, here for the Daily Blob, where we say, well, I guess you're right. You might be kind of screwed. So apparently the concept of learn to code isn't exactly the magic bullet a lot of people thought it was, right? For a long time now, for about 10 years at least, all the poor people in our society, all the disadvantaged people in our society, all the coal miners in our society have been told, well, just learn to code. If you put your time and energy into it to learn to code, your economic future would be bright and wonderful too. But because you're lazy and because you're stupid and because you will not take the advice of the right side of history, that is why you have problems in our society. And I've been screaming for a long time that coding is basically just like bricklaying. It's just like bricklaying, just like auto manufacturing, just like coal mining. In fact, it's a supply and demand thing. You code to build something. Ergo, you need customers who need something built and have the excess capital, the excess money to be able to pay you to build that thing. And they need customers to actually need their products and so on and so forth. Again, the whole concept of the macro environment. There's somebody, I'm not sure who's talked about this, but they've talked about being laid off as a pizza delivery driver after the dot-com bust, when they had their college degree, when they had their MCSE, when they had their military electronics experience, and all kinds of other stuff. I'm not sure who it is. There's some tech influencer who has talked about this many times, about what it feels like to be laid off. Not fired, laid off as a pizza delivery driver during the dot-com bust. And here's the reality, right? During the dot-com boom, basically way too many technology professionals were hired. There was this idea about what the future would look like. That's not what the future looked like, and so we had the dot-com bust. And then after the dot-com bust, the problem was companies didn't hire technology professionals even when they needed them, and that created a big issue in our particular industry. But basically what it comes down to at the end of the day is it is simply supply and demand. Coders are providing a service. Dog walkers provide a service. Cleaning people provide a service, right? All these people provide a service. Coders simply provide a service. What? You're comparing a Node developer to a dog walker? Yes, jackass. Yes, I am. If people don't need their dogs walked, they're not going to hire the dog walker. And if people don't need their nodes walked, they're not going to hire you, right? But this is the reality. Anyways, I've talked about this for a long time now, where I would argue we basically hit the number of IT-ish type people, coders and the rest of it that society needs back in about 2016, 2017, right? Not that we don't need them. It kind of goes back to the whole Tesla thing. I'm not saying that Tesla should not be valuable. I just question whether or not it should be more valuable than every other car company in the world, right? The same thing is true, right? I'm not saying that coding isn't valuable, IT skills are not valuable. But are they that valuable? I highly question that. And anyways, what I've talked about for a long time at this point is we hit the mark we needed to back in 2016, 2017, somewhere around that time frame. And basically, most of the growth in employment we've seen since then is basically this weird scheme in order to get investment money. Right? If you don't have a profit and you barely have revenue and your user growth is crap, how do you prove to investors that your company is growing? Well, you hire people. And it is. This is how stupid our system is. Look, we are not in late stage capitalism. To be clear, capitalism is going to be around for a long time. Doesn't mean capitalism doesn't get really stupid sometimes. And so one of the stupid issues we've had in the current capitalism, cycle, is basically you had tech companies hiring people to prove to investors that they're growing so that they can get more investor money, which they use to then hire more people to prove to investors that they're growing to get more money. And again, it's just turned into a world where your ass is the valuable thing. It's not the ROI. It's not whatever else. Your ass being in the seat is the value that you bring to the situation. Again, I had a buddy of mine. He was working on a government contract years ago, but again, it proves that it kind of talks about the point. And he was a cybersecurity guy. So he came from the agencies. He had a master's degree in cybersecurity. And so this was 15 plus years ago. So 15 plus years ago money. And he was making $250 plus a year. He's making $250,000 plus a year working on this contract. And he told me how horrible it was. And I was like, dude, how can it be horrible, right? You're the lead cybersecurity person on this major government project. You're making $250 a year, again, 15 years ago, so that was more, came out more than it is today. The whole 9 yards. How can this be a bad thing? And he said, well, the issue is, Eli, the contract needs me, the work doesn't. It's like, what? It's like, well, yeah, government contract, red tape and all that kind of stuff. And so when the government put out the bid for this particular contract, they said they needed somebody of my credentials to be on this project, right, in order for this contract to be accepted. And I was like, okay. And he's like, yeah, but the work that actually needs to be done doesn't need anybody of my skill level. So in 2010, he was playing solitaire all day. I mean, there's a certain sadness of playing solitaire all day in 1999. There's just an extra level of sadness of playing solitaire all day in 2010. But that was the thing. He was making a lot of money to be an ass in a seat. And the problem is, we scaled that. We scaled that concept. We hyper-scaled that concept. And now we have a lot of technology professionals out there that are crying because they're getting laid off and nobody wants to hire them because, yeah, their ass was valuable. Oh, I guess you now know what a porn star or one of these actresses feels like once they hit 60 or hit 40 or whatever. It's like, sorry, girlfriend, you pay for your ass. Ass just ain't as sexy as it used to be. And I think what compounds this issue, right, is that so many people have been hired under this ass-in-seat model that not only the company cultures at these technology companies have been distorted, but the culture of the entire industry has been distorted. Again, one of the most fascinating things that I find, and most frustrating things, so I've been doing these one-on-one conversations with my students for Silicon Dojo for a number of months now. Right? And one of the things I've noticed with this time around, so I've done these kinds of things over the years since 2015, been talking to my viewers quite a bit, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, probably up to 500 or 600 of these meetings at this point. And the questions people ask are generally the same, but they rotate through again with the different cycles. And one of the interesting things that I've found lately is that everybody wants to know how to get a job. And again, my advice is if you want to be a technology professional, find problems to solve with technology. Find valuable problems to solve with technology. Find people that are willing to pay to solve those problems. And wham, bam, thank you, man. Again, a little bit more complicated, but that's basically it. But the curious thing that I find is people are like, no, Eli, no, you misunderstand. I want a job as a technology professional. They don't necessarily want the work of being a technology professional. You don't know how many people I've talked to. Again, the whole GitHub thing, right? So I have talked to countless recruiters, right? Countless recruiters. And again, CEOs, small development companies where the CEO is still involved with the hiring process. And the first thing that they say is they're going to look at your GitHub account. Period. This is what they all fucking agree about. When they're looking to hire you, the first thing that they're going to do is they are going to look at your GitHub account. And depending on what's in your GitHub account, that is going to be one of the signifiers on whether or not they're going to push forward with the interview or possibly hire you. And the curious part is, again, and I tell this to the people I have conversations with, and it's amazing how many of these folks just refuse to use GitHub. Not refuse to use GitHub. It's not like they're doing projects and they refuse to post them to GitHub. They just refuse. It's like, well, Eli, I finished my boot camp like a year ago. I don't see why I should have to work and post things to GitHub without a job. It's like, Bucko, that's not how our field works. Maybe that works for a florist, right? You get out of the floral school boot camp, and then you don't do anything until you get a job. Maybe that's fine for florists. But again, the technology world, that's not how it works. Again, we're interests, right? Decision makers, hiring people, right? We need people that are intrinsically curious, that are intrinsically trying to figure things out about technology, that are intrinsically, again, learning and building their skill set just on their own. And that's the big thing. Why should I do work when I'm off the clock? It's like, I don't, honestly, again, you get into the morals and ethics. I don't get into morals and ethics around here. You get into the morals and ethics. I don't know. Should you better yourself in a way that will provide more value to the company in your off hours? That is a curious question. Here's the deal. In the real world of being a technology professional, that's how it is. If you turn your computer off when you leave the company and you do nothing at all past that, you're probably not going to have a great career in this industry. And I'm not saying you have to do specific things. Like if you're a Ruby on Rails developer, I'm not saying you go home and you develop more crap on Ruby on Rails, but it might be like you're a Ruby on Rails developer and then you go home and you spend like 5 hours a week figuring out AI, figuring out which AI API is good, maybe screwing around with Python, or screwing around with C# or screwing around with something else. It's like, oh yeah, my day job is Ruby, but for my own personal projects, as you'll hear, my personal projects, I prefer blah, right? Again, if you don't have that interest in our field, it's probably not going to work out well for you. But the issue is we've had such a long period where so many people have begun paid simply to put their ass in a seat. The issue that we run into is I get a lot of pushback from people because there's so many folks out there that are saying, no, Eli's wrong, right? They should pay for my ass to be in a seat or whatever else. And so the issue that we're running into now is basically our politicians and our thought leaders and our mommies and daddies have pushed a tremendous number of people to get into the coding world. Again, the whole idea of learn to code. At the exact same time, the companies that hire coders are basically just hiring to put people's asses in seats. So from your level, from the employee level to the company level, the concept that you as a technology professional should be solving problems with technology has literally gotten lost, right? Well, now we're in the period you always get into, right? Again, you can strap a rocket on a turkey, doesn't mean the damn thing's going to fly. Turkey will come back in contact with the ground. It will not be a landing though, right? The issue is, again, with the economy or anything else, you can do a lot of stupid things to keep it in the air. Doesn't mean it's flying. At some point, it's going to have to hit the ground again. And that's basically what we're looking at right now. Again, interest rates are back up. We had a time period of 1% interest rates. High net worth individuals would take loans at 1% and they would dump them into something else, and then they would keep the spread. Right? So if I can take a loan at 1% and I can get a 20% return, that means I get 19% return for basically doing nothing. 19% return on $1 million is $190,000 a year. 19% on $100 million is $19 million a year. High net worth individuals can literally make $19 million a year for taking money from here and putting money there. Right? Right, we get into that world, and then again, the people that are trying to get that money, again, people putting asses in sea, right? All of that's falling apart. Interest rates are going up, and now we have the administration we have. We have the administration we have. Oh, and so the wheels are coming off the economy. So what happens in an industry that's been propped up by just insane macro forces? What happens when those macro forces get kneecapped and the people that are in that industry don't actually believe it's their job to return value to the customer? You're gonna get a crap show. So that's where we get here. So this is going up a lot of places. I just got this because you can still access it for free from Futurism. Quote, learn to code backfires spectacularly as comp sci majors suddenly have sky-high unemployment. I would argue this is not sky-high unemployment. It is high unemployment. But yeah, because People don't need your ass anymore. Oh, it's like looking that poor stripper in the face. It's like, oh, girlfriend, you turned 31. Nobody wants to see that ass anymore. It's not me. It's not me. I'm not saying it's a good system. They should like your ass. What? A 31-year-old ass versus a 30-year-old ass. That shouldn't be that much difference. But nobody wants your ass anymore. That's just how it is. Guess what, dear stripper? You're going to have to find a better job. Have you thought about accounting or welding? You could be the next Rosie the Riveter. So yes, again, the coding people are kind of in the position of the stripper. Yeah. Have you thought about welding? Have you thought about welding? Quote, every kid with a laptop thinks they're the next Zuckerberg. And that is about the case. And again, it is funny being in the startup world. See how insane these folks are. As Newsweek reports, recent college graduates who majored in computer science are facing high unemployment rates alongside the increasing probability of being laid off or replaced by artificial intelligence if and when they do get hired. Again, I would argue this whole artificial intelligence thing is being blown way out of proportion. Again, artificial intelligence is here, it's good, it's great functionality, blah, 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 blah. Again, we always have improvements. You always have improvements. The tech industry always changes. You roll with the times. I would argue the artificial intelligence is it's just a smokescreen that a lot of these executives are using basically just to dump people in mass. Right? Major layoffs, major firing looks bad. Replacing employees with AI looks cutting edge. In his latest labor market report, the New York Federal Reserve found that recent CS grads are dealing with a whopping 6.1% unemployment rate. Those who majored in computer engineering, which is similar, if not more specialized, are faring even worse, with 7.5% of recent graduates remaining jobless. Yeah, I was actually surprised about that one too, because computer engineering, so basically it's engineering like the hardware, like you would be designing this kind of stuff. That used to be the higher value skill set, and they actually have a higher unemployment rate. Again, I wonder if that is going to get a lot worse with the things that the Trump administration is currently pushing through right now. Again, with the policies against China, 145% tariff until it's 30% tariff. The FCC banning testing of RF chips in China now. A whole bunch of other things. Again, one of the things you have to understand, like Mattel came out, they talked about this, where Trump is really going after Mattel. Right? So Mattel is an American company. They do their design, they do their development, they do their marketing, they do the high value stuff for the company in the United States, and then they outsource the actual production of the Barbies, the actual toys, to Vietnam or Indonesia or wherever else, right? Basically, they just don't see that there's a massive amount of value of assembling Barbies in the United States. So one of the interesting things is basically Trump is actually going after Mattel, right? Trump has literally said he might attack Mattel if they don't bring the manufacturing of the Barbies back in the United States, which is its own stupidity. Again, you look at Apple, right? Apple designs and does a lot of stuff here in the United States and then gets the actual products manufactured over in China, Vietnam, India, and that type of thing. Trump has literally talked about leveling a 25% tariff against Apple. Like not India where new iPhones are being produced, but Apple itself, which I didn't think that was a possibility, but there's a whole bunch of crap I didn't think was a possibility a couple months ago. And so one of the interesting things, again, with these businesses, right, if your company is in the business of designing products that then get manufactured somewhere else, you have this administration just causing complete and utter chaos in the supply chain system. How likely are you going to be, as a company owner, to hire more people to develop more stuff, right? You might be like, hold on a minute. I'd like to hire somebody, but the person that's currently in office looks like they're trying to destroy our entire society. So let me figure out what we're doing before I bring somebody on for $100,000, $150,000 a year, right? So that's going to be one of the big issues with especially things like computer engineering. This should be a high-value, sought-after career field, but with what's going on in the macro world, who the hell knows what's really going on? Let's see here. Comparatively, the New York Fed found, per the 2023 census data and unemployment statistics, that recent grads overall have only a 5.8% unemployment rate. So basically, the idea is that the unemployment rate is actually still pretty decently high. It was at like 4.2% or something not that long ago. And so college unemployment right now is at 5.8%. While folks who majored in fields like anthropology and physics fared even worse with unemployment rates of 9.4 and 7.8 respectively, computer engineering had the third highest rate of unemployment on the New York Fed's rankings, while computer science had the seventh. Right, you were told to learn to code so you could get a job. You were the seventh most unemployed group coming out of a college program. A precipitous fall from grace for a major once considered an ironclad ticket to earning high salaries and job security. Those numbers notably are worse even than the outcomes for journalism grads. Despite being accurately advised that their chosen field is dying, recent grads who majored in journalism are only experiencing unemployment at a rate of 4.4%. Oh, that's sad. That's sad. Fake news is beating computer scientists. Brian Driscoll, an HR and business consultant, told the magazine that the pipe dream, quote, sold to CS majors. Hey, has anyone talked about that for years? Doesn't match up to the reality of the current job market that still, quote, rewards pedigree over potential. Quote, we've overproduced degrees without addressing how exploitative and gatekept the tech hiring pipeline has become. Driscoll said, quote, entry-level roles are vanishing, unpaid internships are still rampant, and companies are offshoring or automating the very jobs these grads train for. And again, I think automating is the better word to look at, right? There's AI. AI is what it is. We're going to have a lot of AI people on, right? So I'm doing interviews. We're going to have a lot of AI people on so you can hear from their mouths what the hell AI is. Anyways, there's this whole argument about AI. I would argue it's going to be getting into more just simple automation. What happens when Ansible comes for the coding world, essentially? Again, if you look at the old school IT world, again, what I was trained in for MCSE, again, we did not have good patch management systems. We did not have good, very antivirus systems back in the day. We did not have very good, what's called orchestration tools. Back when I had my company. And as time has gone by, we've gotten better orchestration tools that makes it easier to support more and more systems. So you can dramatically add systems to your infrastructure and at the same time actually reduce headcount for your IT staff. And these are from automation. This has nothing to do with IT. It is simply to do with automation. I would argue the same thing, again, is going to be true in the coding world, is we're just getting to the point where a lot of routines can be automated, a lot of routines can be streamlined, especially as companies realize they probably have more tech professionals than they actually need, basically cleaning things up, right? There's been this period of growth. Again, with any kind of business, you're going to have the period of growth. Like you can only do so many things at once as a business, right? So basically you can either grow or clean up. You don't want to be growing and cleaning up at the same time because that just kind of turns into a crap show. So like when you're in your growth phase, you're going to grow. And as you grow, you're just going to get, I guess you would call it like technical debt. Documentation isn't going to be done properly, right? There's just going to be a whole bunch of mess because you're growing so quickly. The thing is, once you get to a certain point, you should stop that growth phase, and that's when you go back to clean everything up. You clean up your systems. You make sure you either create standards or you get everything up to the standards that they should have been on already. You do the documentation. You do all of that kind of thing. And the curious part is once you start doing that, the efficiency of your systems increases, so you can actually start reducing staff. And that's just kind of one of the processes of running a business. Quote, every kid with a laptop think that they're the next Mark Zuckerberg. The finance guru behind MichaelRyanMoney.com told the magazine, quote, but most can't debug their way out of a paper bag. And again, I hear this from a lot of people going through these coding schools and even through college programs where they don't come out with useful skills. Again, one of my issues with the current administration and how he's attacking so many things. It's all about destroying. It's all about destroying. It's not about building. I am not hearing anything about how we're going to improve the college curriculums to verify that the curriculum matches what employers actually need. Again, most of these universities are still teaching Java. right? Again, I was talking to students at the local university here, and when they do tests, they still hand write out the code on pieces of paper and hand that in for their test. That's what they're doing in 2025, right? And actually, I met the head of the local program, and he's proud of that piece of shit program. Literally, again, think about this. The local program, I was talking to the head of the local program, and I asked them, I was just like, how does AI come into all this? And again, we're in 2025 now, so ChatGPT has now been out for 2 years. So nice, right? How does AI figure? And again, I thought he was going to talk about PyTorch, right? I thought he was going to talk about TensorFlow. I thought he was going to talk about, you know what his response was, right? We dissuade them from using it for at least the first 2 years. In 2025, a computer science degree program, when the head of the program is asked, where does AI fit into your program, literally states that students are dissuaded from using AI for the first 2 years. Here's the thing, right? If you're in a college program right now, if your program is dissuading you from using this technology, how in God's name do you think you're going to be prepared to go into this field? Right? But that's the reality, right? Our college programs are not built to actually get people trained because it doesn't matter, right? The whole system is rotten, right? From when you were getting a job you were not qualified for to be put an ass in a seat. For you being told that you should go into computer science or whatever, even though you don't give a damn about solving problems with technology. Whether it's the boot camps, whether it's the universities, everything here has been a pipeline to put an ass into a seat so that tech companies can get their little share of investor money and everybody else along the way can get a share of your asshole, right? That's the reality. We created a gold rush mentality around coding right as the gold ran out. Ryan continued, referencing the learn to code craze of the late 2010s and early 2020s. Quote, companies are cutting engineering budgets by 40%. 40%, not 40, while CS enrollment hits record highs. It's basic economics. Flood the market, crater the wages. Wow. I'm glad a smart person finally said that. Where do they go from here? Aside from going back to school for something more lucrative, they could take the suggestion from one laid-off tech veteran who last year told SF Gate that she had started selling her blood plasma to make ends meet. Well, there you go. It's not going to pay for your mortgage, but I don't know, maybe it can pay for your breakfast. So yeah, it does seem like the IT world, the coding world for employment is cratering, which shouldn't be a surprise. And before you say it, no, it doesn't have a goddamn thing to do with AI. AI is here, AI is cool, AI has many uses, blah, 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 blah. This isn't about AI. Again, I would argue it's more about 1% interest rates. I would argue it's far more about 1% interest rates and the failing industrial base of the United States. If you look at computer science, I've talked about this before, I would argue the rise of tech jobs and the rise of real estate valuation have basically gone in tandem as the rest of the industrial base in the United States falls the hell apart. Right, because that's the thing, right? You used to be able to graduate high school and be able to get a middle-class job. And that middle-class job got you things like family health care. You could buy a house and get family health care and the whole 9 yards. This whole system has been falling apart for most of my adult life, right? Again, it's interesting. Even like my stepfather and my father, were retired out of the government. And the interesting thing is the programs that they retired under, even for me as a Gen Xer, didn't exist. Like, it's funny, like you hear the millennials complaining about the boomers, and the curious part is, like, a lot of this stuff didn't even exist for my generation. Again, my father's under the actual federal pension system, and they phased out the federal pension system, I think, in the early 90s. So even if I had followed in my father's footsteps, I would not have been able to reap the benefits that he did, even if I had followed the exact same path. Again, my stepfather retired out of the Navy, and the agreement that he signed under didn't exist by the time I joined the Army, right? A lot of these things were already going down, and we've seen that with outside of the tech world, the stagnation in wages and the rest of it. But the problem is, again, for our politicians, what do? What happens when the political class is abjectly failing the people in a democracy? In a democracy. Right? Well, you have to give them hope, and you have to make them feel like they are getting wealthier, right? That's the big thing about governments, is government's jobs are there to make the people's lives better. So if the industrial base is falling off the cliff, and the medical system is falling off the cliff, the education system is falling off the cliff, if the basic foundations of our society are getting stress fractures and becoming more damaged by the day, how do you pretend, how do you put a veneer over everything to make it appear that things are good? Well, one of the things you can do is you can drive the value of houses through the roof, right? My salary may not have gone up significantly over a decade, right? I may be paying more into health insurance where I get less from it, but the value of my house is doubled. Right? If I haven't gotten a practical raise in a decade, but the price of my house has gone from $300,000 to $600,000, that means I've gained an additional $30,000 a year in wealth that is not tied to my direct income. Ergo, I do feel better off. The problem with this, again, is putting veneer on there, is as society drives up the cost of housing, then the people that don't have as much money, it becomes ever harder to actually buy a house. But again, generally, homeowners are the ones to be voting and that type of thing. And so, hey, you win the next election. Right? Again, the whole thing, again, with factory jobs going away, with decent middle-class jobs going away, right? If the jobs just go away, that's hard for the political class to deal with. But if you have this bright spot, right? If you can slather a veneer over one industry, and it's like, oh, yes, your coal mining job went away, but if you learn to code, you can make twice as much as you used to. Right? Oh, the city that you're in is getting more decrepit by the year, but, with high-speed internet or whatever, you can get a remote job with some company that's going to give you, $150,000 a year, right? And so there's a huge impetus, and again, in order to prop up this field. This is where, again, under Obama, and anybody who's been watching me for a long time, remember when I started losing my mind over this, that worthless piece of crap literally came out, and there was a grant program literally for college graduates to go to coding boot camps. That's right, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, he was so smart that he saw college graduates coming out with massive loans and degrees that were worthless, and he realized the solution was to give them more money so that they could go to coding boot camps. This was real. Right? And so it's propping that up. So it's not that our economy is failing, it's that you are failing to keep up with the economy. Right? And again, notice how all of this stuff, never blame the leadership. Never blame Mark Zuckerberg when he lays off tens of thousands of people because they are low performers. Never blame our government officials when your city goes to hell because that's just the lazy and the people that don't care about their societies anyway. Right? And they put these veneers up there to make you feel like things are better. Again, the issue that I've had for a long time, I talk about this with BLM. Right? Again, I don't believe in BLM. I never believed in BLM. Black Lives Matter, that's stupid. Black lives should matter. BLSM, I am a die-hard believer in BLSM. Black lives should matter. But they don't. Right? We all know that. And that's the thing. Everybody's screaming out these policies, and everybody's doing these protests, and everybody's marching, everybody's, right, putting the veneer on social justice. here's my question, again, for all the Antifa people out there. How many early childhood education facilities did he spin up? Again, if you talk with African American single mothers, one of the biggest issues they run into is childcare. Fucking childcare. Right? If you're poor and the government is now forcing you to look for a job or get a job in order to get any benefits, there is a fundamental question of what the hell do you do with your kid while you're at work? And again, especially with a lot of the child care that currently exists, right? It's like a 9-to-5 type thing for 9-to-5 type people. Well, again, if you're in the inner city, you're disadvantaged or whatever else, what happens if the decent job you get? You might be able to get a $20 an hour job, but it's over the midnight shift. How the hell are you going to get child care for the midnight shift or one of these, whatever, other shifts, right? But that's the thing, is we don't, from nobody, not from Trump administration, nor from the Biden administration. I haven't seen anything where we're spinning up more child care facilities just to simply be able to deal with folks. Again, we're not building more houses to deal with the housing situation. We're not improving our education system. So much of what's happening in our society is basically just spit polishing a fucking pile of diarrhea, and then passing it off to the next administration or whatever to be blamed that where did we get this diarrhea from? And I think that's one of the things to be considering. Again, as a technology professional, like when I talk with you folks, I get so frustrated. It is fascinatingly horrible how many of you want tech jobs but don't want to do the tech work? You want the pay, you want the benefit, you want everything that goes along with what you think a tech job is, a real tech job is. You don't want the work itself. Again, playing with things after hours, like, literally figuring out what problems to solve. Doing the GitHub, doing the documentation, going out and schmoozing, doing the things that you need to do. It is fascinating how many of you don't want to do the work. And then what do you think is going to happen to the industry? So anyways, there are some things to think about. As I was told years ago, back during the dot-com boom, right? There's booms and busts. If you stay in the tech field, there will be another boom cycle. When I worked in the corporate world back in the early 2000s, one of the managers that I supported that made significantly less money than I did had actually graduated the computer science degree in the 1980s. He had graduated in the 1980s, and basically he made poverty wages because in the 1980s, nobody gave a damn about computer science. So he ended up having to be able to pay a damn mortgage, so he went off into management. He became a manager. I was then like 10, 15 years younger than him, making significantly more money than him. And we would just go in and talk, and he'd talk about the old days in the 1980s and how computers were. And I talked to him about how computers were now. And it was a very, very weird thing because he had been in the field and then he got it out of it because it was so bad and then it got good, right? And then dot-com bust happened. I get laid off of pizza delivery, right? Go out, become a consultant, things get better. Then there's a great recession, things get worse. And then things get better, things get worse, things get better, right? And again, that's where I had one of my MCSE instructors, MCSE 2000 instructor back in the day. And basically he said that's the thing with our industry is there will always be ups and downs, but people will always need technology support of some sort. Again, the technology support that we provided back in 2000 does not look like the technology support that we provide in 2025, but it's still technology support. So if you want to stay in this field, if you want to be in this field, if you want to solve the problems that are actually valuable, again, you're gonna have to get through whatever this is, and there will be a light on the other side. If you think you should make a very good salary simply because you have a piece of paper from an institution that only cared about giving you a piece of paper, it's going to be a tough row. It's going to be a tough row to hoe. So anyways, there you go. Those are my thoughts. What do you think about the unemployment rate for computer science graduates now being at 1%? What do you think about the unemployment rate for computer engineers being at 7.5% for graduates? What What do you think about this in the technology world? Put your thoughts down below. And with that, see y'all later.